Sometimes the scriptures that we read, we don't really pay attention to the whole message, but we only catch a certain part of it because it catches our attention, and we then don't add or subtract what was given before or after to help us understand what God really intended us to have. Perhaps the gospel today is one of those areas wherein we forget the first part and the last part, but we only see the middle part, and we can't understand it. Well, first of all, let me just say this is hypothetical. It's not real. There was no man with a woman with 7 husbands. They're trying to get Jesus in trouble. They're trying to trick him. But the thing that he shows here in this gospel is the fact that they didn't understand God. They didn't understand God. It's amazing how many times we don't understand God. We blame God for our problems. We blame God for forgetting us or for not being with us. When in reality, sometimes it's our feelings, it's our emotions that are working against us, and they're not necessarily true. Sometimes we allow circumstances around us to say, where's God? Why isn't God handling this? Well, God never fails. He may not be seen right at this moment, but don't worry. In the end, he's going to come out on top. We look at the Old Testament story today of Job. Most people know the story of Job because of the tribulations. And they don't really go into the depth of it to really find out what it's all about. Job was not a Jew. He was a Gentile. His wife was an Arab. My interpretation of the word, it might be Arab, but Arab. They were outside the Jewish culture, traditions. But he was a very wealthy man. In fact, Scripture says, history says, that he was one of the most honorable men in the East. He had a tremendous amount of possessions. He had 7,000 sheep. 7,000. He had 3,000 camels. Camels. He had 500 oxen, pairs of oxen. He had 500 donkeys or asses. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters. A very prosperous individual. Now, get the picture. He was not of the Jewish area. He was in the lineage, yes, but his father was not a believer. And he was not following, perhaps, what the Jews would put as tradition. But he had an awareness of God. He somehow knew God, and he was living a righteous life. Not perfect, he was not sinless, but he was living a life that was blameless and upright. And we see the story then turn to a picture wherein the Scripture says, and we have to again interpret this, because otherwise if we don't interpret it correctly, then we get the wrong picture. It says, Satan appeared before God, or he came before God. Impossible. Impossible. It's stating that he, like you and I, can come before God. We come before him in prayer. We come before him in communication. But we don't come to him face to face. The devil could not come with the angels into heaven. No way. No way. There is no evil in heaven. None. And so he could not have gotten there. Now you see, if we don't understand that, we think, well, he has access to God. He can go to God anytime he wants. No. He has the same access perhaps that you and I have. Not as vital and not as important and not as good, but still he can communicate with God. He can say things to God, and he does. God asks him this question. Now again, this is not literal. Perhaps this is in order for us to understand the picture of life itself and how we get into difficulties. God asked him, where have you been? What have you been doing? And his reply is, I've been going back and forth through all the earth, trying to find those whose hearts are not completely yours. Now, that right there should make us wake up. Because he's looking for those whose hearts are divided in their loyalties. Because if a heart is divided and it's not totally God's, he can get some action out of that. He can cause some things to take place. So it challenges us to make certain that our hearts are totally God's. That we don't have the lust and the greed for the things of the world and the other things around us, but we are wanting God's way. We want God's provision. We want God's life. Not following the ways of man, but following the ways of God. Job lived a righteous, blameless life. Now, he was not sinless, but he had a blameless life. He was not involved in evil, and he was not causing it to happen. His family was very much united. There was unity in that family. It would be like a picture of perfection. Because there was no division. They weren't fighting against each other. They were loyal to each other. They had the sons. They would have the rest of them come to their houses for the parties and the meetings, and they all came together. And basically there was no real problems. But the beauty of Job was the fact that even though he had confidence in his children, anytime they had these gatherings, he would always offer a sacrifice just in case they did something wrong. He covered his family. Blameless. God, talking to Satan, and this is dialogue which is there for us to get a picture, not necessarily because it really happened that way, because the enemy cannot go to heaven, cannot face God. God then said to Satan, have you thought about Job? Because the enemy was there to tempt people. He was there to cause people to turn against God. I mean, that was his goal. I don't want to get into my interpretation of Satan, but he's there with purpose. And God said to him, have you tried Job? The response of Job, or Satan about Job was, listen, you blessed him so much, there's no way he's going to trust anybody else or be tempted, because he's got so much. You blessed him with everything. Look at what he's got. God says, no. No. I'll give you permission. Now notice, the permission had to come from God. The enemy can't do all he wants to do. He's not independent. I'm going to get into trouble because I have to start explaining that. But he's not independent. He has limitations. God said, why don't you tempt him? So I'll give you permission, but you cannot take his life from him. It was done to show us a picture. There's a reason for this. Because remember, we are on a journey. And the Old Testament and the New Testament work together to bring us to a picture of what God intends us to be and how we get to that point. Job lost all of his animals, everything. He lost his children. His own family, his brothers and sisters, turned against him. And the enemy was able to put upon him boils. He was in torment. Now, get a picture with me of what was going on. Here is a man who's standing blameless and upholding righteousness. Not without sin, because remember, Christ hadn't died yet. But he was blameless in his life, and he was prosperous. Now all of a sudden, everything is gone, except his wife. God have mercy on wives. And his friends come to tell him why this happened. They got all the theories and all the things, and he keeps rejecting the things that they're saying to him. He doesn't accept it. His wife tells him, "Why don't you curse God and die?" What real help. I thought the wife was supposed to be a helpmate. But this was the wife of Job. Remember, she was an Arab. She said, "Curse God and die." He wouldn't do it. He held firm his faith in God. Now remember, he was a Gentile. You know, in the Old Testament, God many times did things for the Gentiles he didn't do for the Jews, because the Jews had turned against him in their lives. Elisha and the widow with no food. She was not Jewish. She was a Gentile. The general with the leprosy, Nehemiah, or Naaman, with leprosy. He was not a Jew. He was healed of leprosy. How many times God used the others? Why? He was not tormenting, but he was making jealous Israel by blessing those who were outside of Israel who had confidence in him. It came to a point where that, this is considered an allegory. So understand that, because it was God speaking to us to challenge us and to challenge Israel. But he loses everything. Job loses everything, including his wife eventually. But he holds on to a faith in God. And he says, "I know my Redeemer lives. And I know that at the last he will take his stand upon the earth." He knew this. He held firm to this. Didn't matter what was going on around him. Everything was taken away, but he knew God would not fail. He had a confidence. He wasn't blaming God for all of this, because his friends were blaming God and saying God did this because he made a problem, he caused a problem, he sinned, he did something wrong, and so God brought this. He said, I don't accept it. That's not my God. He knew God. He knew God. In our lives today, this that he shows to us in this allegory, it challenges us, because we face things in our life that make us wonder, where is God? Why did God allow this to happen to me? You remember last week we were taught by Paul to be ready for temptations. And probably if we talk about temptation, we talk about something evil. But probably the biggest temptation that we face is one of turning against God or losing faith in God. And this one here shows how man is supposed to live out his life, regardless of what comes your direction. You don't give up your faith in God.
Amen.
You know God is going to conquer and God is going to overcome. Job says he wishes that these things could be written down so that people could learn from them, the things that he would say about God. And he had that confidence in God. Job was like, he was a type of Christ, because Christ also suffered for things he did not do. The patterns that are given to us in the Old Testament are meant to show us something in the New. How Christ took all the sin of the world upon himself. All the punishment, all the cruelty, the embarrassment he took upon himself. For what? So that we would be redeemed. We would be saved. It tells us in Revelation chapter 12, the devil accuses brethren before God night and day. He keeps bringing charges against us. But Christ keeps defending us. He is our advocate. He said, no, that's not true. I gave my blood to cover, and they are cleansed. They are righteous and holy because of my work. Job ends up in the end of the story about Job of having everything restored, and in some cases more than what he lost. He had 7 sons given back to him, 3 daughters given back to him. I don't know about all the animals and all the other things, but even his family that had turned against him came back. The restoration. This is a faith we must keep in our hearts. We must, in the times of tribulation, in the times of temptation, not giving up confidence in God. God is not going to fail. There may be a reason why we're going through some of the things we go through. And I have told the priests when we ordained them, you better understand the gospel or the scriptures you teach before you teach it. Because if you don't, you're going to be tested by what you teach. You're going to face it. I know probably some of you don't think I ever go through a temptation. I ever go through trial or tribulation. Not true. I probably face as many, if not more, than you. There are times when you think, I'm just going to give up. Because it seems like everything going against you. This week was one of those weeks, where it seemed like, what's going to happen? And when you don't have the finances, you don't have all these things that you need, and then something happens. My automobile quit. Not a noise when you try to start it, nothing. Deacon Myung spent a whole day trying to find, probably had the car laying all over the garage. Nothing. Won't work. Nothing. What? Why would this happen? God, you're supposed to be protecting me, saving me from this. I don't know why, but all I know is God's still God. So I have to bring the truck today. The truck is sick. It loses power. And coming up to zigzag, the truck doesn't want to go up, it wants to go down. No aircon. So when I was getting to the zigzag, I was thinking, God, I need your help. I need your help. Then I thought, no, God, we're going to do this. We're going to make it. So we started up the zigzag, and one of these big trucks loaded, you know, and it can't even go 5 kilometers per hour. And you can't get around it. And the truck goes boom, quits. And you get it started again and try to get up there. No, won't go. God, I know you're still in power. We're going to make it. Finally, I get around the truck, so I hit the gas, and I'm going as fast as I can, so the rest of the zigzag's not going to, you know, bog the truck down. Poor girls in there, they're hanging on like, what's going to take place? Because, you know, he's going around these things and weaving back and forth. We get almost to the top, and it quits. We're only right there. You can see the top. It quits. So I turned it off. We got off to the side. I turned it off. Turned it on. Nothing. Zero. Same thing like the car. No power. Nothing. I thought, I'm not a mechanic. I don't know what to do. What do? I kept trying. Nothing. Finally, I thought, okay, get out and pretend you know what you're doing. Open the hood and look. So I opened the hood, and I was looking at people walking by. They're looking at me like, you know, what's going on? I don't know what all those things are, but I saw something. The connection on the battery had come off. The Holy Spirit draws your attention. You know, He helps you. I put it back on, got in the truck, started. We got here. Well, we had some exciting times, but we got here. But the temptations are there. You know, give up. Okay, I won't go to church today. No, I'm going. I'm going. Nothing's going to stop. We have a task to do to give God glory and honor. And we do it. We do, even though the temptations are there. And I say this because I know you think I'm without temptation, without tribulation. That's not true. I don't talk about them. In fact, I wouldn't talk about this if it wasn't the lesson. You do it and you give God the glory. I was thanking God the whole way. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And we made it. It was tense, yes. I was stressed, yes. And I was sweating, yes. And I had to go to the CR as soon as I got here, yes. But you have thanks in your heart. God won't fail you.
Amen.
This is the story of Job. We go on into, you know, it says in Romans, exalt and glory in your tribulation. Exalt and glory in your tribulation. In other words, don't let the tribulation take away your joy. Don't let it take away your joy. Put your confidence in God, your faith in Him. And remember, if God is for you, it doesn't matter who is against you.
Amen.
Now, it may at the moment seem like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? But God knows. When we look at Paul's letter in the epistle today, the letter from Paul to the church at Thessalonica, he said to them, said, God chose you for salvation. God chose you for salvation. Therefore, I have pride in you because God chose you. If God chose you, how can I be against you? How can I not like you? How can I have something, you know, in my heart that holds me from a relationship? God chose you, and He chose you for salvation. See, He gives us a totally different picture. This was Job. These guys, his friends, boy, friends like this, who needs? Telling him all the evil that he was, you know, he did this wrong, he did that wrong, God was punishing him, no, he was holding firm because he knew God. When you know God, it doesn't matter what may come against you because you know him. You know him. First off, this didn't come from him. Because God is a God of mercy, a God of grace, a God of love, a God of compassion, a God of forgiveness. Forgiveness. But sometimes he lets things happen to test us, to build our faith and our confidence in him. You know, a few years ago, had these things happened to me, I would have thrown up my hand. But I thought, guess what? I taught about temptations last week. Tribulation. Here we are. There it is. But God will bring the victory. He will not leave you. And Paul was saying, you know, you were chosen, you were sanctified by the Spirit and by faith in truth. And this is what we have to hold on to. Hold on to the truth. Job held on to the truth. He knew his God had not lost power. He knew. And he said, yes, but when you get to the end, he's going to be the one ruling the earth. So we keep our confidence and our faith in him. But he said, he warned them, make certain that you follow the traditions that you've been taught. Now there are two kinds of traditions. There are man's traditions and there are God's traditions. Too often we put man's traditions in priority. We judge according to man's standards. If, like with Job, if I have 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels and 500 set of oxen and all these other things, if I have all of that, now I'm being blessed by God. Maybe, maybe not. They may be a source to keep your faith away from God because you're trusting in what you have. So it isn't the tradition that we want to follow. If I have plenty, doesn't mean that my relationship with God is good. Because sometimes those with plenty are evil. And according to the scriptures, he allows the evil to collect and store for the righteous. So don't get jealous and don't get upset because somebody else has more than we have. It's not God's saying to us, you're not blessed. Because the thing that is the greatest blessing we can have in our life is peace. Because that peace brings us health and strength. It brings us prosperity. It's a confidence in God. Confidence in him. It's the hope that we have because of him. The Lord is faithful. He will strengthen you and he will protect you from the evil one. He will protect you from the evil one. You know, the other thing I didn't tell you about what happened this week was I was closing the big gate at the driveway. It was stuck. And so I pulled it hard. And I had on my slippers. And it tore off almost completely off the nail on my big toe. And my slipper was full of blood. And even now when I walk, it still bleeds. And it hurts, but okay, it'll grow again. It'll be more beautiful than it was before. You know, these are things, they happen to us, but it's not because something's wrong. It's an attitude of putting confidence and faith in God, and it brings hope to its fullness in our lives. Now go back to the story in the gospel. The Sadducees, who were coming to tempt Jesus, did not believe in the resurrection. And the story they made up, hypothetical, was about the resurrection. Come on, you don't even believe in the resurrection. And you're going to tempt Jesus with something you don't even believe yourself? Well, sometimes that's what happens. So they said, what if this man, because Moses told us if a man dies and his wife has no children, the brother takes her and has children with him. And this one story they came up with, this woman had 7 husbands and no children. Now they say, what's going to happen in the resurrection? You don't believe in the resurrection. And Jesus was wiser than this. And he said to them, you know, you're so caught up in the ways, the traditions of man. Marriage, children. You're so caught up in this being the prime importance in your life. It's not like this in heaven. It's a totally different environment. Different things. You know, many times we think it's just going to be the same as on earth. No. No. He said, you will be like an angel. No. No. You won't be like, you may be like an angel, but you'll not be an angel. Because angels have no will, no choice. They don't have. They do what they're told. But we will be like them in our commitments and are totally being consumed in the environment of heaven that God has created for us. We're on a journey preparing for that. That's what we're preparing for. But as the journey goes forward, things keep changing and we lose importance, we lose control of things which are not valuable any longer, and we put our faith in something which is far greater. And what he's saying is, heaven is so much greater than what earth is. You won't even think of these things. They will not be the important thoughts of your heart. You have other things that will really consume you. Now, he doesn't really say that there will not be any marriage. But the totality of this, we have to wait and find out what it really means, because nobody's come back and told us. I don't know of anybody that's been there that came back and said, this is what it's like. We don't know. But the thing that we can see in writing is that heaven is so focused on one thing, giving glory and honor and praise to God. Not me, not you, him. He is the focus of everything. All needs are met. There's no sickness, no pain, no tears, no sadness, no anger, no divisions. Everything is perfect. Well, in perfection, you lose some of the things that you use to protect yourself, to make yourself self-confident. Look at me. I have 7 children. So you can see how important I am and how powerful I am. But in heaven, you don't need that. You don't need that to build your identity, because you are so perfect in Christ and what Christ has given. Things will be different. But the whole focus is upon knowing God and knowing His kingdom. Knowing. Because when we know it, the things that are around us, they won't bother us. Jesus said, I want you to understand, I'm not the God of the dead. It's interesting, it comes All Saints' Day. Not the God of the dead. And I told you last week, those cemeteries are not filled with people. The people are gone. They're not there. And so when you go there, you're not going there to visit anybody that you know, because those people are gone. The remains may be there, but it's the earthly part of their life that's there, because the soul has left. It's together with God, with Christ. That's what he said. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. We need this grasp of understanding, Because we have a picture of the end is death. It's all over. It's finished. Not true. Not true. It is a beginning. It's a beginning of perfection. It's a beginning of life as we've never known life to be. And so it shouldn't be something that we are afraid of. It should be something that we are ready for because we have confidence in God. I don't understand it. I don't know what it's all about, but I know my God, and I know what He has prepared is beyond my expectation. I'm sure of this, and I have said in just a wake that I did recently, I said, I want you to know something. This person that you think is here in this casket, you know they're gone. You know that. But they're not thinking of you at all. They are so consumed with the glory and the majesty of being with Christ, they have not remembered you at this moment. So if you think that they're there looking for you and feeling sorry for you, don't feel that way, because they are so engulfed in the perfection and the beauty of heaven. They don't look back here and say, Kawawa. No, they're there, they're encouraging us, but when they first get there, I don't believe that they think about us very much, if any at all. Because it's so awesome. And this is what Christ was saying. You got your mind focused on life on earth. In the heavenly kingdom, it's different. And you're going to be so consumed. These things won't have value to you like they do now. You won't have the same value. This is where our life comes in. But we must know God. We must know God. Yes, problems. Yes, temptations. Yes, tribulations. Yes, they're there. Hold on. Keep your faith in God. He will take care of you. He will not fail you. I believe that. I live that. You know, when I was leaving the house this morning, I was just a little bit nervous, and I said, no, I'm going to start thanking God. I'm going to put my confidence in Him. And, you know, the thoughts come back, and I just say, nope, we're going to make it. And here we are. Now we still got to get home, but we're here. Going home is easier than coming here because it's down. And you can coast. You know, gravity pulls you down to the bottom. You don't have to go uphill. Thank God. You face the test. You make the choice. You put your confidence in God. He will not fail you. Amen. He will not fail you. When that truck quit this morning, I thought, no, I've got to go because we're having Mass today. I'm not going to sit here. How am I going to get there? I can't walk this far. When I got out and I opened it up, there I saw this thing hanging off of the side. I put it back on. It works. There's the confidence in God. Sometimes you have to pretend like you know what you're doing. But God then gives substance to your pretensions. But you don't give up. You put your faith and your confidence in a God who never fails, who never forsakes. And that is we're coming to the end of ordinary time. This is what we've got to get. We've got to know God. We've got to know Him. We've got to have our confidence in Him. Don't put your confidence in the things of the world. Don't do it. Put your faith in God. He will not fail you. The great God, and your God, and my God. We have hope in Him. And even though the enemy will try to tempt us, even though he will try to bring tribulation to us, we don't trust Him to overcome. Our God will overcome. He will not fail us. Blessed be God. Amen.